We interrupt this record to bring you a special bulletin. The reports of a flying saucer hovering over the city have been confirmed.
Did you really go out with an alien? Uh-huh. What was it like? Real different.
Becoming Human, a Mork and Mindy podcast. Hello, listeners. This is Paula Schaffner with episode 58, Mindy Gets Her Job. So yes, one of the few episodes with just Mindy's name in the title, and it's pretty much what's on the tin. In fact, the IMDb synopsis doesn't give us much more information. It just says that Mindy gets a job at a local news station. This episode first aired on January 22nd, 1981, so it is the first Mork and Mindy episode to air during Ronald Reagan's presidency, and yes, there will be Reagan references. This was the 45th episode, directed by Howard Storm. It was the 15th, written by Tom Tenowich, and the 12th by Ed Sherlock. It was the first that this team had done since the Monkey's Uncle episode. Although, so far, it has been a very mild autumn and winter on Mork and Mindy. This episode more than makes up for it in the exteriors, and in fact, it impacts the plot. The first exterior is of the house, and there is tons of snow. It's falling, it's on a car that's parked out front, it's in the yards, it's on the house, it's on the trees, and so on. Fred in voiceover tells Mindy not to worry. He's sure she'll get a job soon. She hopes so. Mindy is wearing her yellow robe, and I wondered what time of day this was supposed to be because Mork has already been out and about. Fred is wearing one of his usual outfits. I didn't know if Mindy slept really late or took a shower and then just put on her robe. On the other hand, it seems very early for her to be turning in. Possibly she went to a job interview and then came home and took a shower afterwards, but it's never explained. She's sitting on the couch and he's standing. Then he sits and says if it wasn't for something his own father told him, Fred would never have gotten his first job. His father told him, "Get out of the house, you bum." I don't know whether or not he's kidding. I feel like we haven't really heard much about Mindy's grandfather. He smiles and Mindy laughs.
And if you're real good, I'll take you to see Popeye again.
Fred and the audience are very amused. And I can still remember over 40 years ago how excited and delighted I was by that joke because I had seen Popeye when it came out about a month and a half earlier. I just really enjoyed the fourth wall breaking of it. I liked that there was this nod to another Robin Williams character. And I really have always had a soft spot for the Popeye movie. The funny thing is, it's not exactly a kid's movie. I mean, kids can definitely enjoy it. I was 12 and I was a little bit shocked about jokes about venereal disease and so on. Well, Lola probably would have got some of the more adult humor, and presumably Stephanie would relate to Wimpy. The line about taking them to see it again, I don't know if we're supposed to think they have just come back from watching Popeye, or if it was just recently and now they're coming over the house. Obviously, their parents seem to be comfortable with them hanging out with Mork and going to his house and so on. That doesn't seem to at all be an issue. You can just catch Mork wondering how Popeye got those big arms, and of course that was a big part of the making of the movie, how they had to go through several different versions of Popeye's very distinct arms before they got a type that they were comfortable with and that he could act in. Mork doesn't really look like he's dressed for the weather other than the cap he takes off, and I wondered in this episode if maybe Orkans don't feel cold weather the way Earthlings do, although other episodes would suggest differently. The girls look very cute, and they're in coats and they have pointed caps, and they look a little bit like elves. Mindy says hi to the kids. Mork says he has wonderful news for Mindy. As Stephanie heads for the kitchen, he tells her, "Bon appetit, Stephanie." I think that the audience by now is supposed to know about this running joke that Stephanie loves food and she will come over and raid the refrigerator. As Lola heads over to the couch, Mork says he told all the other munchkins today that Mindy is looking for a job. He says that Mindy is tired of him fretting around going, will she get the job or will she end up as the bag lady of Boulder, fighting alley cats for fish heads? So making jokes about the homeless right after that episode about Mork learning how to become a bum. He asks Lola to tell Mindy the good news and to lay it on her. Mork sits on the couch arm closest to Lola. Lola says her uncle manages KTNS, the TV station, and she thinks there's a job available in the newsroom. Mindy tells her thanks anyway, but she's already been over to KTNS 2 or 3 times and there's nothing available. There's a cut to Stephanie in the kitchen holding an apple. She tells Mindy, "You're spinning your wheels. She should get a job in the House of Pies. She eats there a lot." She takes a bite out of the apple. Mork says Stephanie eats everywhere a lot. More of Mork making fun of Stephanie's weight and her appetite. Mork tells Mindy that Lola's uncle said there'd be a job opening today. And the way Lola phrased it was she thinks there's one available. So I'm not sure why Mork is more sure about this than Lola, other than he's probably more of an optimist. Mindy says, "Really? Well, maybe I do stand a chance." So she believes it coming from Mork, but not from Lola.
I don't see why not. You're attractive to men, yet no threat to women.
You know, when she talks, E.F. Hutton listens.
Here's my uncle's card. And oh, by the way, take one of mine.
Thank you.
Come on, Stephanie, I gotta get home. Carl Sagan's on Cavett. You might have a better chance of getting a job if you weren't so skinny.
When Lola says that Mindy is attractive to men but non-threatening to women, she's also somewhat describing Pam Dauber. Not just girls of my generation, but other girls and women. Always had that kind of affection for Mindy and Pam Dauber. Well, a lot of men were attracted to her. She wasn't a typical late 70s, early 80s bombshell, but she was very attractive in a girl next door kind of way, and that is quote-unquote non-threatening to women. There's a reference to the E.F. Hutton investment commercial where somebody would start to talk about E.F. Hutton like in a restaurant, and then everybody else would eavesdrop. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen, so Fred is referring to that. Again, this feeling that Lola is like a mini adult, and in fact she has her own business card. I don't know what her business is, but it seems plausible for her. And of course she wants to listen to Carl Sagan, the astronomer, on the Dick Cavett show. And again, she and Stephanie are hanging out together. And I assume they live close enough that they can walk home and it's safe enough. Stephanie is no longer holding the apple. I don't know if she just polished it off real quick, no pun intended. I can't tell what she's holding now. It could be like a sausage or some kind of meat. And she thinks that Mindy is too skinny, so that's sort of a spin on the fat shaming that Mork does towards Stephanie. That's it for Stephanie and Lola in this episode. But again, pretty solid, cute work from Stephanie Cayano and Amy Tenowich. Fred asks Mindy if she's going to call the station. She says, well, hesitantly, and then she eagerly says, you bet, and she jumps to her feet. Mork says, oh boy, isn't it wonderful, Pops? So he's continuing to call him Pops. After both men stand and Mindy runs over to the phone, Mork says, I mean, today, little Mindy McConnell from a local TV station. He puts his hands on his hips and says, tomorrow, Fred Silverwoman. So referring to the network executive Fred Silverman, who in fact hopped from network to network, sometimes saving them, sometimes crashing them, turning them into a female superhero, Silverwoman. Mork and Fred go over to Mindy. Mork both shushes and has trouble containing his own excitement. Mindy says, hello, KTNS? Yes, I understand you have a job opening. Mork leans over to listen and she gently pushes him away. Stuttering a bit, Mindy says her name and says she's very interested in coming down for an interview.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Oh, sure, I can do that. Well, I can try to do that. Okay, fine. Tomorrow at 4. Very good. Thank you. Bye-bye.
What to say, man? All I can hear is...
The job of the title and of the plot is kind of vague. It's at a TV station. We don't know if she is supposed to be a Girl Friday or what exactly the role is. Mork eavesdrops, but he couldn't hear her, so that allows Mindy to do some exposition. And as so often on this TV show, the phone calls are one-sided. There may be an exception somewhere, but it always feels like it's just usually Mindy in the living room on the phone. Occasionally Mork, but we don't usually hear the other person, and so we have to read between the lines in a different way than was done on the Bob Newhart show. Mindy says that every once in a while she'd have to be on camera. She says she's never been on camera before. And of course she was on camera when she and her friends helped Mork with the special program to promote Nelson's candidacy, and all the daycare kids were there. I suppose that's different because she was just singing a song for a few minutes. Mork says, oh, come on, Mind. I saw those home movies your father made when you were 2. You're a natural. Remember this one? And then he mimes Mindy as a toddler dancing and then flashing her underwear. Fred and Mindy are amused, but Mindy gives Mork a playful punch. There's a daytime exterior of a TV station with snow falling, and there's lots of snow already on the ground. We don't see any call letters for the TV station, but there is a satellite dish. A man in voiceover says, "Thank you, miss, but we're looking for someone with more experience." It's kind of throwaway dialogue, but it's also setting up what's going to happen. We see 4 young brunette women seated. The one that's closest to the camera has bangs and shoulder-length hair. She's wearing a red blouse with long sleeves and a collar, an ecru vest with a matching ecru string tie. In the longer shot, we can see that she has on a long floral skirt and brown boots, and her tan purse is on the floor. There's actually 5 brunettes sitting in folding chairs. Another one walks by. She's got a dark brown turtleneck, a plaid skirt, and brown boots. One woman actually has on a purple top and purple slacks with red boots, but they're all generally dressed alike, and they're all reading magazines, except for the woman walking over to the interview table. Mindy enters from stage right. She's wearing a white blouse with a modified V-neck. She has a long tan skirt, lighter tan boots, and her tan coat is over her arm. This is our first glimpse of the TV studio. We will be seeing more of it, not just in this episode, but later in the season. It's very small and simple. The news desk says KTNS 31 Boulder, so channel 31. The sign on the wall says news with blue lettering on a blue background. Mindy takes the empty chair in the first row. The 2 women she sits between look at her. The purple woman looks wary, while the red blouse one looks a bit smirky. Mindy tells the red blouse woman, "Boy, this weather, I just about missed my chance. My interview's at 4. The other woman says hers is at 4:20. She's early. Not much point in being early, I guess, other than you get to see how the other interviews go, because there's no privacy. There's no separate office. This is all just happening yards away.
No, you look... Oh, no. Sure is crowded in here, huh? Sure is. My name's Mindy McConnell. Mine's Mandy McDonald. What a coincidence. Isn't it, though? I bet you're a journalism major, too. Yeah, how'd you know? Well, most of these girls here are. You all travel as a group? Now, I bump into a lot of them at these interviews. You know, there are only so many jobs. Oh, you're telling me. It isn't as rosy as they lead you to believe in college. Colorado State? Oh, almost. University of Colorado. I graduated with honors. Oh. Me too. Oh, good. You don't happen to live with a guy named Mork, do you? Not anymore. You know a Mork? Oh, I thought you said Mark. That's my old boyfriend. Oh, Mark and Mandy. Cute. You know, it's amazing. You think you're so special when you graduate. Then you get out in the world and you find you're just another perky face. I don't believe it.
So this is definitely Mindy dealing with her doppelgangers, in particular the one called Mandy McDonald, who has an ex-boyfriend named Mark, so Mark and Mandy. We hear that Mindy graduated with honors, and there is, if not retconning going on this episode, then there are some surprising details being filled in. I thought that what happened was, before we meet Mindy in season 1, she has dropped out of college. She decides to go back. Her father helps her with this. She tries to continue to go to college and work, but it's a struggle. She is hoping for a scholarship at the beginning of this season, and she doesn't get it, and so she decides not to continue on with college. Here, we're told, in this scene and later, that she went to college for 4 years. She graduated with honors. I don't know if maybe she was hoping to go on to grad school for journalism and then decided against that. If she has a bachelor's in journalism, I would say in the early 80s that probably is enough, especially to get this kind of job, just in a local TV station doing miscellaneous things with some airtime. When Mandy says that she's just another perky face, we're again meant to think of Mindy as perky. We can see that Mindy just has a lot of disbelief about this experience, that she realizes she's just like all these other journalism graduates. These girls or young women look like her, and they have the same equivalent background. The plaid skirt woman gets up and she has her briefcase, so her interview is clearly over. Obviously didn't last that long. The interviewer says, "Next, Mindy McConnell." The plaid skirt woman exits and Mindy gets up. There's a cut to Mandy looking a bit smirky again. I kept feeling like there was something going on with her, like she's the anti-Mindy, or we're going to find out something where she's manipulative or something. I mean, I'd seen the episode before, of course, a few times, including some point in the last decade. It still felt like there was this odd subtext going on. And the purple girl still looks suspicious, like she just doesn't trust Mindy or the situation. We didn't see anything of the interviewer before except for the back of his head. So he now shifts over to another chair facing the audience. Audience doesn't seem to have any reaction to him. I think they would know who this was, and I'll talk about who that is in a bit. For whatever reason, we don't have the applause like we get of Exeter coming in or something. Mindy sits and says that she's McConnell, Mindy. Well, she means she's Mindy McConnell. The interviewer is Miles Sternhagen, and he's the station manager of KTNS, so he's doing his own interviews. This is just a very small station. He's an older man with glasses, white hair, and a beard, and he's well-dressed and well-spoken. She hands him her resume and says, "Nice weather, isn't it?" He says, "No, it's snowing." She says, "Oh, right." Making small talk doesn't work. He asks her qualifications. She's a graduate with honors from the University of Colorado, and she did 3 years on the school newspaper and was the associate editor of the yearbook. Did colleges still have yearbooks in the 80s? I don't remember that when I went to college later in the 80s. It was more of a thing in high school. We do know that she was working on the school newspaper, though, because that came up in, I believe, the nuclear facility episode. Maybe a couple others as well. Because, yeah, I think we had a mention of her editor on the paper. Mr. Sternhagen asks if she has any experience in the field. She says no, but she really feels... He cuts her off and says, "Thank you very much, but they're looking for someone who has." So, as we learned in the voiceover, they're looking for someone with experience.
Thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Sternhagen, but there's something I'd like to say.
Yes?
I know you've probably met a lot of people like me. Well, I'd like you to know that I've certainly met a lot of people like you, too. You all claim that you want to hire someone with experience, and yet you'll never give any of us the chance to get any. You probably wouldn't have sent a man to the moon because he hadn't been there before. Well, I may not be experienced, but I'm intelligent and capable and hardworking, and I do a darn good job. No, I do a damn good job.
Miss McConnell, you believe in speaking your mind.
Yes.
That's why I fired the last girl. Maybe I ought to take a chance on you if you're willing to work for $200 a week.
I'd do it for half that.
Oh, no, that wouldn't be fair. Let's make it 110.
I can't believe it. You mean you're hiring me? I don't even know what the job is.
Well, it's not all that thrilling. This is a small station, not like when I was at the network. Then, when I turned down Cronkite and Rather, well, it mattered. That's why I'm here in Denver's appendix. But then that's old business. As far as the job goes, Miss McConnell, you'll do any number of trivial odds and ends and fill in on camera for whoever's not here.
Oh, well, don't you want to audition me or anything?
You seem to have a lot of faith in yourself. We'll try you out on the air. Tonight on the late news, you'll do the weather report. Dewey Fishbeck is out with a crew.
Gee, tonight? That just seems so soon. I mean, I've never really done too much of that kind of thing.
Well, that's all right. If you're no good, I'll fire you. Power is dizzying.
Well, I promise you, you won't be sorry, Mr. Steinhergen.
That's Sternhagen.
Oh.
And I'm already sorry.
No.
So we get what the subtitles call melancholy music and the audience awes because, you know, they care about Mindy and they were hoping she would get the job. I mean, that's in the title. Even though she's nervous, she stands up for herself. I just had to note the irony that she talks about sending a man to the moon when she's living with an alien who actually saw men on the moon. I was surprised that Mindy actually swears. She says damn, and the audience appreciates that. And the other applicants clap for her, I guess because she's standing up for them, speaking for all of them about this catch-22, that they want experience, but nobody will give you that experience. He says he fired the last girl for speaking her mind, but he's going to hire Mindy. And it reminded me a little bit of the famous Lou Grant, Mary Richards interview on the first episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, although Mr. Sternhagen has a very different personality and he doesn't say that he hates spunk. But it's similar where you think, oh, she's not going to get the job, but in the end she does. Mindy manages to make a bargain of, instead of being paid $200 a week, she'll be paid $110. She's got a long way to go on negotiation. And yeah, we still don't know what this job is other than some on-air responsibilities. We get a little bit of background on Mr. Sternhagen. He used to work for the network with Cronkite and Rather. Now here he is in Denver's appendix, like he was going to say something ruder. I'm not sure why the audience thinks it's funny that Dewey Fishbeck is out with the croup, other than I think it's a childhood disease. When Mr. Sternhagen talks about power being dizzying, I guess it's supposed to be ironic because he doesn't have that much power. It's a very small TV station. She manages to mess up his name by calling him Steinhergen, so he's already starting to kind of regret this, but on the other hand, he can fire her if he wants. Although the other applicants appreciated her standing up, they're understandably not thrilled that she got the job and they didn't even get to interview for it. And we can see Mindy's glee through the window in the door, so it's very cute. I like seeing Mindy happy. She obviously has some setbacks in this episode, but she does, no spoiler, get her job and succeed despite being nervous and uncertain. We don't see anything further of Mandy MacDonald, although we will see more of Mr. Sternhagen. Mandy was played by Jessica Hoyt. It was her first TV role, and in fact she only had 3 more credits from then until '84. There's a blustery daytime exterior of the house, so now the snow is falling on top of the snow from before. Everyone is holding champagne glasses. Mindy is in the stage right chair. Jeannie and Glenda are on the couch, and Fred is standing. Mindy is in her job interview outfit. Jeannie is in another outfit that I really like. I just want to say right now, although I don't love every costume this season, I feel like there are some that just really are just right, and it feels like maybe the costumes are a little bit better this season than in the past. Jeannie in particular. So she's wearing a white blouse with a Peter Pan collar and puffy sleeves. She's got a red and white striped scarf or tie, a tan vest, and a red skirt. Glenda is in another pantsuit. It's black with purple stripes and I think maybe some red. Fred is in his gray jacket, olive turtleneck, and dark slacks. Jeannie asks why Mark doesn't want to celebrate with them. Mindy says Mark doesn't drink champagne. He thinks it perpetuates cruelty to grapes. And we know that Mark has kind of an odd relationship with plants. Glenda says Mark is such a little snugglepuss. She wishes she could buy one somewhere, like Mark is a pet or something. She takes a sip. Jeannie gives Mindy a "do you believe this" look. Glenda tells Fred she loves his choice of champagne. Jeannie agrees. It's much better than the champagne Remo gets for the restaurant. That stuff comes in cans. Glenda winces. We don't actually see Remo in this episode. It's just one of these where he and the restaurant are referred to. Fred chuckles. He says he'd better be going before the snow gets worse. He sets down his glass. He says Kathy and he will be watching Mindy tonight. He calls her honey. And he just can't wait to hear how she's going to slip "Hi, Dad" into a weather report. He's been heading towards the door while he's talking, so he grabs his coat and exits with a grin. And yeah, it's another episode where Kathy is referred to but not seen. And that's the last we see of Fred in this episode. Glenda says that man is such a social lubricant. Jeannie has taken a sip, swallows it, and shakes her head a little. Really, what can you say to Glenda? Jeannie asks what Mindy is going to wear on the air tonight. Mindy says she doesn't know, just her Mindy clothes. We've seen half a dozen other women wearing her Mindy clothes.
Jeannie, dear, it doesn't matter what she wears. It's what she projects. Now, Mindy, you're going to be on at 10 o'clock at night, right? Well, if I were you, I'd cater to the mood of the late-night adult audience.
How?
Well... Hello, Boulder. Welcome to the Joy of Weather by M. We'll get to the weather later. But first, I dance for you.
I wouldn't talk like that on my honeymoon.
I don't know. I think maybe you should just be yourself. You know, like, hi, I'm Mindy. Isn't the weather great? There's a real cute blizzard out there. And don't you just want to write a thank you note to Jack Frost? You know, something like that.
I'm really confused because I think I'm supposed to be shipping Jeannie and Glenda now. We keep having these episodes where Glenda suddenly remembers they've got to go somewhere and they have plans, and so they're having this friendship apart from Mindy, which is nice for them. Honestly, there's more chemistry here than there is with Glenda and Nelson. And we find out that Mindy will be on the air at 10 o'clock. Kind of early. I think it was always like 11 o'clock news, but hey, maybe it's different in Boulder in the early 80s. Mindy says that she wouldn't talk like that Glenda seductive kind of way on her honeymoon, which is true, as we'll find out. We see that Jeannie sees Mindy as very perky, and so that's her imitation of Mindy. Glenda says, "Would you look at that snow?" She lightly touches Jeannie's hand and says they better go. Glenda is so glad that she kept those Gucci snow tires. Everybody stands. Glenda goes over the door. Jeannie says, "Mindy, they don't really make Gucci snow tires, do they?" Mindy hopes not. Glenda grabs her for a coat. Everybody exchanges goodbyes. Jeannie says they'll be watching her, and I'm guessing they're watching her together. Jeannie and Glenda exit.
Hello, Boulder. Welcome to the joy of weather. By, oh, God.
So yeah, this is not the way that Mindy is seductive. It doesn't feel comfortable to her. That's the last we see of Jeannie and Glenda in this episode. So they're sprinkling in some of the other characters, but the episode is mostly about Mindy's job. The significant portions are set at the TV station. There's another snowy exterior of the TV station, and there's a sound effect of the wind howling. We get another shot of the interior of the TV station, and instead of the folding chairs, now we see a small TV on a stand. Mark is in one of his usual outfits with his orange and black shirt. Mindy has changed into an outfit that has shades of olive, and that includes her boots, but she's also got a red scarf. There's an old man in a gray cap, a comfy-looking green sweater, a blue plaid shirt, gray slacks, and brown, maybe loafers. Very casual, very behind-the-scenes kind of thing, and very in character for this actor, by the way. They make introductions, and the old man is Jake Loomis, her cameraman. He's surprised she got through. Nobody else did. He says the whole town is snowed in. Mindy says she has a four-wheel drive Jeep, so again, her Jeep getting a shout-out. And then she realizes what Jake says, and she says, "What do you mean nobody's here?" He says it's just him and the engineer. We don't actually see the engineer, so presumably he's doing behind-the-scenes kind of stuff. There's a close-up of Jake, and we can see that he has a big mustache. He says he's been here all night. Show business is his life. And he kind of gives this feeling of this is somebody who's been at this TV station since the 50s. She wonders who's going to do the news. Jake says, "Search me," so Mark frisks him. Jake looks confused. He says that he thought all the flakes were outside. Mark smiles at Mindy, like it's a compliment. Jake reaches into his shirt pocket and brings out a note. He says whoever showed up is supposed to call Sternhagen here at this number right away. There's a phone behind the desk. He tells Mindy to hurry up because the movie's almost over. Jake walks off screen and Mindy goes over to the news desk. Mark looks at the TV. It's his favorite. Benji shaves his legs. And of course that's a reference to the popular dog character of the late 70s, early 80s, who did make movies. Mindy calls Sternhagen and says her own name. She guesses that she's the only one who made it through the snow. She also guesses that they won't do the news tonight.
Oh, no, I don't think... No, I couldn't possibly... Oh, I see. Okay, I'll try. Bye.
You handled that well, man.
He said that there's a half an hour until the station signs off. He said he doesn't want to lose his sponsors, and he said he wants me to fill the whole half hour all by myself. What am I going to do?
We can see Mindy's panic, and Mark doesn't know what to do either, of course. Jake enters from the stage left entrance. He says that Mindy is on in 15 seconds. He hands her a stack of pink papers and says that's the news and weather. He points out the camera. He tells her not to blow it. Mark says thanks, no pressure, like he's speaking for Mindy. She has Mark hold the papers while she goes to sit at the news desk. Jake counts down from 5. Mindy asks Mark to give her the papers quickly. He throws them at her, telling her to catch, and they're not stapled or paper clipped or anything, so they scatter. Jake says she's on.
Good evening. I'm Mindy McConnell, And tonight, I'll be bringing you the news from all over. A news report has just been handed to me. Expected to be over by December. And that's the news for tonight. Another news bulletin has just been handed to me. Thousands flee in terror as... the Pope blesses visitors to the Vatican. And that's the news. Help me.
What'd you say, Min?
Help me.
Oh. Mark, the video junkie to the rescue! Hello, good evening. Thank you very much, Mindy McConnell. Thank you. Thanks for dropping in tonight. Yes, hello. We have the news from Boulder, Colorado, as we like to call it, the Mindy City. And now for the news with Walter Morkite. Hello, I'm Walter Morkite, with Dan Mork in London, Morky Rather in Paris, and Michael Mork in women's clothes. News flash from New York today. Chase Manhattan Bank was robbed. Here's a description as follows. 4 stories high, lots of bricks, and plenty of glass. Moving right along to Washington, D.C. Today, President Ronald Reagan replied to a group of hecklers by saying, "What would this country be without this great land of ours?" He also stunned America on his acceptance of the presidency by going, "My fellow Americans, line." Moving right along, we go to Moscow, but first we have, yes, we have the update. We're going to have the update from San Salvador. There's some physical unrest up there, a little violence. We have the actual footage of a riot taking place in San Salvador. Take it away. We don't have the footage, so this is what it would look like. Moving right along also from the Soviet Union, shot putter Olga Schvitz finally agreed to talk to the press and deny the allegations that she has been taking steroids all these years. She replied by merely saying, she also said their 80-inch bust was merely hereditary. Thank you, Olga. And in the field of sports medicine, another incredible breakthrough. It's called the Joe Garagiola School of Childbirth. It happens in the operating room, and it consists of a man dressed in a catcher's mask and catcher's mitt going, "Yo, baby, ready, baby, yo!"
I'm not clear why she doesn't just take the papers that are on top of the desk rather than under it, but maybe she's just too nervous to think clearly. And we get a joke twice about the news report just being handed to her. Something is expected to be over by December, and I wondered what month this was because we had an episode recently that was set in January. This very clearly is winter, so something's not going to be wrapped up till December. It's clear that those can't all be Mork's arms or Robin Williams' arms because they're too far apart, and so this is sort of absurd visual humor. We get a reference to the Pope, but not by name. She keeps trying to sign off, and Jake keeps signaling her to stretch it out. Mork calls himself a news junkie. Not a drug reference, it just means he watches the news a lot. He calls Boulder the Mindy City, like Chicago being the Windy City, and she is pretty happy to let him take over and just do his Mork thing, and she slowly exits. He calls himself Walter Morkite, and he refers to Dan Mork and Morky Rather, like Dan Rather being split up into 2 names. And Michael Mork in women's clothes, which I don't think is a reference to anybody in particular. He gives a description of the bank rather than the bank robber. And while she's off to the side, she gathers some papers and tries to organize them. Mork pronounces President Reagan's name as Regan, which I think was common, particularly, I want to say, East Coast, maybe upper middle class, maybe liberal. Although Reagan was, of course, an actor who was famous since the 40s and 50s. To some extent, he was still an unknown quantity, and we had not yet heard his name on a daily basis, so there were still some mispronunciations of that. And then, of course, he hired Don Regan, so that helped to differentiate. Mork recycles the lines, "What would this country be without this great land of ours?" And the thing about Reagan giving the inaugural address and saying line like he needs to be prompted like an actor. There's an update from San Salvador, which is the capital of El Salvador, and the Salvadoran Civil War ran from 1979 to 92, so that's pretty topical. And because there's no actual footage, then Mork decides to act out a riot using his fingers. When he talks about Russia, instead of being political, it turns into a joke about Russian female athletes, which was common at that time. Then in sports medicine, we get the Joe Garagiola School of Childbirth. And since Garagiola was a catcher, then he mimes catching the baby during childbirth. And we can see that Mindy is just dismayed. This feels like such a mess. She doesn't blame Mork. He's doing his best to salvage it, but this was supposed to be her big break, and it's not turning out well. A lot of time must pass during what we get of the commercial break, and we get another snowy exterior of the TV station.
You've got to believe in something or you'll fall for anything. Yeah. I want to leave you. Got to go now. But I want you to know that you can fool some of the people, some of the time, and the rest will watch. So, now we have a brief spot announcement. Thank you, Spot. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't know what Mork did to his hair here. It may be a satire of a specific televangelist, but I didn't really get it. I wonder where he got the pink jacket, but on the other hand, it is a TV station, so maybe he was able to have Mindy run down to the wardrobe department and grab him something. Jake says they're off for a 10-second commercial. Yes, there were such things as 10-second commercials. Mork thanks him and smooths down his own hair. Mindy goes over and says they're doing great, and they only have a couple minutes left. She's got the weather report together, so it must have been really scattered if it took her like 15-20 minutes to put it together. He takes off the pink jacket and asks if she's sure she doesn't want his help. She says it's time she stood on her own 2 feet and it's now or never, so a couple cliches. He wishes her good luck. She thanks him and sits at the news desk. She looks nervous again. Jake says they're back on.
Good evening, everyone, and here's the weather report for Boulder and vicinity. We have a blizzard. Heavy snow continuing tonight and on through the weekend. The present temperature is 19 degrees with an expected low tonight of 8. And that's it. Boy, it sure is cold out.
How cold is it?
Well, it's so cold. Well, it's the kind of weather where you'd kind of like to curl up with a nice cup of hot chocolate and a good book and snuggle under a big warm quilt. You know, the kind your grandmother made. And sure, it's hard to drive in the snow, but it's a good time to go walk and visit your neighbors. You know, maybe wave and say hello. Sure, winter is harsh, but what other time of year? What other time of year can you celebrate Christmas and look forward to spring? That's it? Oh, well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mindy McConnell, and we'll be seeing you again real soon. Hopefully.
We can see that she does look comfortable reading the weather report off the papers, but she is uncertain about stretching this out. When Mork says, "How cold is it?" that's a Johnny Carson line. The audience would yell that out, and then Carson would reply, "It was so cold that I saw blah, blah, blah." And so that would be a lead into a joke. But she doesn't take it as a joke. She actually comes up with a very cozy sounding scenario with hot chocolate and quilts and reading and a nostalgic reference to her grandmother. So I thought that was nice. And at the end, she's relieved that it's all over, but of course she's uncertain. Jake says that's it, they're off the air, and it was a good job. She says it was, wasn't it? He tells her not to let it go to her head. Mark is very happy for her. They go to each other and clasp hands. She's proud of herself for doing that in front of all those people. Though I don't know that many people are tuning in necessarily. I mean, you would think with the snow, probably some people's reception was knocked out that night. She says it felt great. She says they actually filled the time. He credits her and says he's just the tail on the kite. I thought that was very sweet, that even though Mark did so much, it's mostly about him helping her and being proud of her. They start to hug, but Sternhagen enters from stage right. They let go. Mindy points and says that that's Sternhagen. Mark repeats his name.
How do you do, Mr. Sternhagen?
I'm Mark Nanu.
Oh, have it your own way. I got here as soon as I could. You'd be surprised how fast you can go with 1 foot on the floor and your chin on the horn.
Sounds fun, man.
You know, I thought that my career was over because we had nothing to put on that, tube. You may not believe this, but these are the kinds of crises that really used to get to me. But no more. No more. No. Not now.
Do you enjoy Mindy's weather forecast?
I never know what I enjoy until the ratings come in. I learned that a long time ago when I was high in the network.
Well, do I get to keep the job?
Why not? You pulled me through a difficult time, and I just can't thank you enough, Miss McCall. Miss McCall. Miss McCall-McCausey. And you too, Mr. Needy, Nudie, Naughty, Ninny, Naughty, Minnie, Ha, Minnie, Ha. Oh, hi. I got here as soon. Keep up the good work.
Mr. Sternhagen was played by special guest star, as he's credited, Foster Brooks, and he was then 68, and he lived until 2001. His appearances range from The Munsters in 1965 to an episode of Cosby in 96. This is his first of 3 appearances as this character. He was very, very recognizable at that time. He would be on various sitcoms, celebrity roasts, game shows, and he almost always played the role of this particular kind of drunk, where he would get tangled in his words and he'd hiccup and had bad breath and yet was supposed to be charming and likable. So his earlier scene was going against character, but now Mr. Sternhagen, perhaps because of the stress of possibly losing a sponsor, has been drinking and drove to the TV station drunk, and the audience is delighted. They love this character. Just hits it right for them, and there's no qualms about any kind of danger. And I don't know how long the whole thing of drunk driving being funny lasted. It was certainly a big thing in the 60s in TV and movies, but certainly into the 80s. It obviously looks different now. But there is still that likable quality to them, and maybe some of this is my nostalgia speaking, but I like that Foster Brooks is on the show. I like that he plays Mindy's boss. I'm glad he's coming back. The irony, of course, is that Mindy is so nervous about how she did, and he says he doesn't know what he enjoys until he sees the ratings. And I don't know that he could have even necessarily seen that much. I mean, where is he watching the TV from? Was he on the road? Did he watch it and then hop in his car and come over? How close does he live? So it doesn't really make any sense. Obviously, at that time, there would be no way for him to watch TV in his car. I mean, I think very, very rich people had car TVs, maybe in limousines, but not the manager of a rinky-dink local TV station. And we have him talking about being high in the network. At that time, there was still a carryover of the word high meaning drunk rather than in a drug sense, especially for somebody of his generation. And she wonders if she's lost her job, and of course, he doesn't see why she would have. He's just grateful to her that he got to stay on the air. We never know what the viewers at home thought of this. I suppose if you were a serious news junkie, you would be upset that there was very little real news, if any. On the other hand, you get to watch somebody of Robin Williams caliber humor put on a show for half an hour. That's pretty good. Mork and Mindy clasp hands again as the applause fades. Then they let go. Mork says that's the type of leader this country needs. And I think with Mork, he's not entirely sarcastic. Mindy says, believe her, he was nothing like that when she first met him, and that's why we had that earlier establishing scene to have that contrast. But she doesn't care. He liked what she did, and very excitedly, she says that she gets to keep the job. They clasp hands again. He guesses that those 4 years of college really paid off. They let go and walk over to their outerwear that's sitting on the chairs. She says not as much as her 3 years of Mork. He says, oh, shucks and wazoo. So his usual modest reaction. And of course it hasn't been 3 years. It's maybe 2.5. Time is odd on this show. She hands Mork his jacket and his scarf, and she grabs her stuff. She says she really hates to drive in this kind of snow. He says she's right, it could be kind of dangerous. Then he decides they should get a ride from Mr. Sternhagen. And she doesn't seem worried about this. He exits, and we can hear him off-screen yelling, "Don't take the car! You'll kill yourself!" Which was a much heard and much parodied catchphrase on, I believe it was an alcoholism rehabilitation center. I'm blanking out on the name, but these were ads that they showed in Southern California. I don't know if they aired elsewhere in the country. She does an evangelistic yes, which seems to be the thing this season. I don't know if we've had Mindy do them yet. She exits and we can see that she's actually skipping. As I said, it's just nice to have Mindy, although she goes through a lot in this episode, she is genuinely happy and she deserves it. We all love her and we want her to do well. And yeah, Mork helped her, but a lot of this is her. Our other guest star is Pat Cranshaw, sometimes known as Patrick Cranshaw, who played Jake Loomis. He was then 61, but honestly, he had always looked old for his age. He died in 2005, but his credits are from 1950 to 2006 because there's a posthumous role. He had been on this series before. He played a man in the music store, and he also played a nameless old man. This is his first of 4 appearances in this role. He's not a great actor, but he just has a different kind of likability than Foster Brooks. His character of Jake is just this sensible old-timer showing Mindy the ropes, being a presence in the studio, and so I'm glad he comes back too. There's sort of a desk exterior of the house, and yes, there's snow on the ground. Mork's Emma Orson. Bebo seems to be on some sort of stand or something. I can't see it, but rather than being on the floor, it looks like he's about knee-height to Mork. Mork has a helmet, a rope, and other mountain climbing gear. He calls Orson your lardness. Then he makes this echo. Orson says that's not funny. He has a thyroid problem. Mork says that and a truckload of mashed potatoes will do it every time. Orson tells him to get on with it. This week Mork learned about the concept of jobs, which again should have come up before, but that's okay. After much searching and difficulty, Mindy finally got one. Orson thought she was a student. Mork says she is a very good one, but there's an older saying, those who stay in college too long die by degrees. A nice little pun saying. Orson asks about all the mountaineering gear. Mork says Beebs says it was to make you feel at home, your matter horniness. Do not ask me how they got matter horniness past the censor. I was stunned. Mork laughs. He guesses that Orson doesn't buy that either. He says it's a metaphor to symbolize the climb Mindy's just undertaken to reach the peak of success. Orson asks what that means in plain Orkin. Mork says any earthling that expects to get a job when he gets out of college is a victim of the abominable snow job. Little pun there on snow job and the abominable snowman. There's no guarantee that any earthling who graduates from college is going to get a job unless he plays basketball. Joke about college athletes. Orson says it doesn't seem fair. Mork says it isn't. Like Tarzan said, it's a jungle out there, Jane. The old ones are forced out of their jobs. The young ones can't get in. And the ones in the middle, they all get ulcers from working too hard. Comment on ageism in employment. Mork learned one thing. No matter how high the mountain or how tall the task, you have to take the first step to reach the top. So he's extending this metaphor. Bebo burbles, and Mork slowly starts climbing up on stage right. He yodels before saying no. I was actually excited when I realized this episode was coming up because of the Foster Brooks and Pat Cranshaw appearances, because we get this new setting of the TV station. Mindy gets a job and succeeds at it, and Mork is helping her. The Popeye reference I just delight in still. I wouldn't say that all of the other bits work. The little daycare girls are cute, but again, it's Lola is doing exposition. I don't know if her last name is supposed to be Sternhagen. It could be her uncle or even great uncle on her mother's side, but that's the connection that we get. Stephanie eating is getting a little bit stale, but it's still nice to see them. Jeannie and Glenda have this nice friendship. I don't really feel like either of them is necessary to the show, but it does round Mindy out a little bit to have these other friends. And Fred gets some nice work to do with supporting Mindy, so that's always good. Didn't feel like I was just dazzled by everybody. But it was a fun episode. And yeah, there's some things that I have qualms about with how alcoholism and drunk driving are handled. I rate each of these episodes on a 0 to 4 egg scale, which measures how well it delivers what I'm looking for in the series. I feel like this is a solid 3. There were times I thought maybe 3 1/4. There are those kind of things about it. It's just fun, and it made me happy. If it was just the TV station stuff, I would probably go higher. But the other stuff you kind of need for the framework of it. And I laughed out loud, and I smiled a lot. I also rate each of these episodes on a 0 to 4 heart scale, which measures how well it supports and promotes the romantic relationship between Mork and Mindy. Once again, not a super shippy season. And this one was odd because obviously Mork supports Mindy. He's in her corner, kind of messes things up with throwing the paper, but he does what he can to come to the rescue. He is fretting about whether she's going to get a job, clearly cares about her. We get these moments where they're like clasping hands or hugging, but they're interrupted or they pull away. And it's just sort of an odd thing. I wanted them to be more physically demonstrative and to celebrate together more. But there's got to be a certain intimacy if you let a guy crawl around under your news desk and throw his 3 or 4 arms out at you. So there's that. I would go with a 1 out of 4 for the hearts. Obviously, this is not a skippable episode. Even if it wasn't as good, you need this for Mindy's arc. It moves things forward in that direction. I think giving her a more permanent job is a good idea. I mean, it wasn't like we really got to see her do short-range jobs. They didn't even really do that much with job interviews, so it's just fine. Give her a nice little job here. It's her foot in the door. She can work her way up, climb that mountain. We're now at the midpoint of season 3. They pretty much seem to figure out what they're doing. Obviously, things will change in season 4, but this is where we are for now. It's pretty comfortable. 3 eggs, 1 heart. This is Paula Schaffner with Mindy Gets Her Job. It's not what you know, but who you know.
Dip, 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 dip. Sha-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la, ba-do, sha-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la, ba-do, sha-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la, ba-do, sha-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la, ba-do, dip, 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 get a job. Sha-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la.
Is someone you love someone you hate?
Don't you ever call me a drunk. It happens night after night.
Does someone you care about have a drinking problem?
Hello.
There is something you can do.
Don't take the car. You'll kill yourself.
But you've got to care enough to call for help. Call the care unit before drinking turns someone you love into someone you hate.